Welcome back, everybody. We are excited for another episode of the Louisiana Sports Download. My name is Hunter Bauer, and I am the owner of GoPreps.com and co-host of the show. Also have my co-host Todd Black on me for another week and another episode. And Todd's a great guy, a good friend of mine, and he's also the host of the Louisiana Prep Scoreboard on Friday nights on 104.5 ESPN FM Baton Rouge. And man, interesting week in high school football. We're going to get all into it. We're going to break down the whole new playoff format, but we're also going to take a look at week 2 and kind of talk about some tidbits and some notes there. But anyways, Todd, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You say I'm a great guy. That's pretty nice of you. You're going out on a limb.
Just from what I've heard, anyways. So,
Yeah. No, I like to talk. It's fun to talk high school football, but about the game and the strategy and East Ascension going up to West Monroe and winning there for Darnell Lee was big. West Monroe will be back. They're just trying to find their way and they'll get there.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, they've, the growing pains. I think they've got a lot of youngsters that are, seeing significant playing time for the first time in their prep career. But they're West Monroe. You could most likely see them, towards the end of November, making a deep playoff run. So you can never count out the Rebels. But before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Chevyland, over in Shreveport. Chevyland's #1 new and used vehicle dealership in the area. But if you live outside of Shreveport Bossier, it's no problem. Chevyland offers free delivery anywhere in the state with the purchase of a new Chevrolet. And don't forget about the Chevyland Advantage, which is a no charge schedule maintenance for the first year or 12,000 miles with the purchase of a new vehicle. Chevyland is family owned and operated since 1962, so go visit them at 7500 Uri Drive if you're up there towards the Shreveport area. Or you can shop, click, and drive on the web at Chevyland.com. Bubba and Charlie and all those guys, they're good guys. They can take care of you. They're big high school football fans, so we appreciate them sponsoring everything football for GoPreps.com. So anyways, let's get into week 2. Again, a lot of good action. I know there was a lot of storylines going on Friday night, but there was a lot of great stuff going out on the field as well. I'll start it off. We touched a little bit on it last week, but Zachary, dominating win over John Curtis Friday night, 40-21 at home. Broncos extend their winning streak. It's at 18 games now, which is the longest in the state. For a team with the history that Zachary has put together over the last couple of years and what David Brewerton has built, going up against JT Curtis, just absolute legend and one of the good guys in high school football, and to be able to go over a legendary program like that, it just adds to what Coach Brewerton is building over there at Zachary.
Somebody said the other day they can't recall the last time that John Curtis had lost about 3 touchdowns. Zachary's loaded. There's no doubt about it. And they didn't even have their starting running back with them on Friday night. Interesting though, they started the game at 6:30 so Coach Curtis could get back to New Orleans and do his
radio, his TV show. Yeah. Well,
TV show.
I wonder why. I thought that was so. Zachary really doesn't do it that much. They usually stick to that 7 o'clock kickoff. So, but that makes perfect sense. Yeah, JT Curtis and Ed Daniel. I think they do a Friday recap show for one of the New Orleans news stations down there. But yeah, it just goes to show you still how strong Zachary is as they prepare to defend their title from last year, and still got Eli Holstein, Alabama commit. So yeah, a really good win, a really good night for them. And also, I was looking at some other winning streaks that were extended as well the other night. St. Charles Catholic with a really good win over a good Lutcher squad. They go to 13 consecutive wins now. They're the defending state champions in what was Division III. So, and then you got Westgate, who defeated a good Lake Charles prep team over here from where I'm at, and they're at 10 straight wins as well. So Westgate is still rolling. And then real quick, Todd, before I let you take it, 26 game losing streak going into Friday night, and Broadmoor defeats Tara to snap that. I know we've had 2 or 3 long losing streaks that have been snapped so far this year. So just really happy for programs like that, and be able to get those kids a win like that, and let them celebrate. So
How
anyways,
about
but
Southwood winning again?
Southwood 2-0, first time since I think it was 2003 or 2004 or something like that. And first back-to-back win since like 2006. So the Cowboys are they're rolling so far up there. I'm so happy. That's from my area, from my neck of the woods that I grew up, and for so long Southwood has just struggled as a football program. The basketball programs have been amazing. But that just goes to show you what that new coaching staff is doing up there. They're trying to change the culture, and Jesse Ester's the new head coach. So just happy for them, happy for those kids. They deserve it. They put in the hard work. So excited for them. But Todd, just take us through some stuff that caught your attention for week 2.
First of all, the weather. I think for the second straight week, there's been lightning delays,
Yeah,
more in North Louisiana
North
than is in
Louisiana.
South. But we caught our fair share last week on week 1. It's not ideal, but there was no hurricanes, and so our COVID.
That's
So
true.
hey, lightning delays will take. I think EA in West Monroe started somewhere around 10 o'clock.
Yeah, there were
Um,
several. There were
and
several up
EA is
there. Yeah.
yep. And that caught my attention. I felt like that EA could compete, but would they go up there and win? And, in that process, in the fourth quarter, EA had an 18-play drive that ended on the 1 yard line without getting any points. But to have that kind of drive against the West Monroe defense is really, spectacular. So Coach Darnell Lee at EA has his program going in the right direction. And don't worry if you're a West Monroe fan, because they're not done. They'll improve. They got too good of a coaching staff and too good of athletes, and they'll be good. Staying in that area, Ruston over Jesuit. Ruston coming off
Big
of
win.
Warren Easton battle the week before, really played well, and Jesuit's as solid of a team as you can find, and Ruston was able to pull that out. That was a big win. And then Ouachita, Cardell Sermons, he had a lot of big yards against Neville. They won, I think, about 2 touchdowns, but he had 24 carries for 262 yards. He kind of did it on both sides. And up there we had Sterlington, we had Oak Grove and Ouachita Christian, I think, played, and then Sterlington and Mangum
Mangum.
played.
Yep.
So, when we do this, we want to be able to cover the entire state and talk about the entire state, but there's always good games going on.
Well, and then also staying in North Louisiana, but talking about teams from Northeast Louisiana, the Northeast part. Union Parish went over to Airline over in Shreveport, took down the Vikings 26-22. It was a really good game, and the Farmers ended up edging Airline. But something to note: Trey Holly, LSU commit, 4 touchdowns and 251 yards rushing. He moved into 4th place all time on the all-time rushing list for Louisiana. He surpassed Jermaine Williams from Ascension Catholic. So he's moving up there. He's 542 yards shy of tying Nick. I hope I'm saying this right. So correct me, Todd. Nick Broget's from University Lab, his all-time record. He's got 333 yards so far this season. So the kid from Union Parish, man, Trey Holly, he's continuing to not only light up the scoreboard, but he's continuing to move up that all-time rushing list. And bar any, knock on wood, any unusual circumstances or injury, he'll probably break that record this year.
So it's Nick Brissett.
Is it Brissett? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
North Louisiana guy here.
I hear you. And but who did he go ahead of? Do you have that in front of you? Who's like
Trey.
number two?
Let's okay. So I'll break down the list. So we'll do the top five. So Nick Brissett is at number one. He has 8704, 8,704 yards. Kenny Hilliard is number two from Patterson. He's at 8661. And then you got Trey Hargrave from Lake Arthur. He's at 8327. And then you got Trey, who just moved in to fourth place Friday night. He's at 81.62 all time. And then, like I said, Jermaine Williams rounds out that top five, who played at Ascension Catholic from 86 to 89. So a lot of good names up there in that top five list, and Trey deservedly belongs on that list. And like I said, I think he's gonna keep moving up. He only stands 162 yards out of third place, and probably can get that in the next game.
So think about this. He plays both ways, right?
That's correct.
And so let's see. You mentioned who was. I was trying to think who was second. You just said
Kenny Hilliard.
Yeah, he played both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. I mean, Brissett didn't, but when you're going both ways like that, and you're still putting up these type of numbers, you got to be in some kind of shape, man. That's pretty awesome.
Well, and I was, they there were some people that tagged Trey on Twitter, some performance, and apparently his defensive performance the other night was a lot better than his 251 yards and 4 touchdowns. They kept posting video of some big hits he was putting on some of the airline guys. So just goes to show you, what kind of athlete you're getting, that LSU is getting out of Trey. Excited for him. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's a really good kid. Like I said, deserves everything he gets this year, and as he moves on to the college ranks. So, like I said, Trey Holly moves into fourth place all time. He's trying to chase that record, 8,704 career rushing yards. That is the mark, and he stands 542 yards shy of tying that record, and is probably going to break it. It's going to be a long season. So we're only two games into the season. He's already got 333 yards. So pretty good. Pretty good.
Absolutely. And let's see. I think a big win for Captain Shreve over Calvary.
Yeah.
Calvary's
Adam
a
Kirby.
really good, solid ball club. I don't care if they're 1A, 2A, or 5A. For Captain Shreve to be able to play with them and win by 2 touchdowns was a big win for those guys as well.
Well, and just the type of athletes that Captain Shreve has right now, and Adam Kirby is in his first season as a head coach, 2-0, won his first 2 games, and so I know they're excited up there in Shreveport and at Captain Shreve High. So yeah, just to me, anytime you beat a team like Calvary Baptist, like you said, I don't care if you're 5A through 1A. That's saying something, and that's making a statement. Calvary's just one of those teams that reloads every year, and it's just I'm interested to see how Captain Shreve's just going to keep improving. They play a tough district schedule. That 5A district is pretty brutal up there, week in and week out.
So you know who they got this week?
Who's that? Probably who's it? Bird?
Union.
That's right. That's right. I forget. Yes, Union plays another.
But Bird's playing Calvary. You were close.
That's right. Bird's playing Calvary. Okay. Yeah. No, you're right, and that's going to be a good game. I think Captain Shreve and Union played last year, and I want to say Union edged them out last year, if I remember right. But that's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be played at Union this year, so Captain Shreve's going to have to make the trip. But definitely a game to keep your eye on this week.
And I think this is the 3rd week in a row that they played a 5A team from Shreveport.
Union, no, Union played Homer the first week.
That's right.
But still, Homer's, again, they're legit this year. They're going to be a major contender in the playoff race. They actually held Trey to 88 yards rushing in that first game. Homer's defense did, which that says a lot. But anyways, to play Homer, to play Airline and Captain Shreve in back-to-back-to-back weeks, Joe Spatafor is definitely getting them ready for a playoff run, no matter what division they're in. And man, what a way to do it!
Well, in a way, I think so. He's been short in the Superdome last year against Sterlington. So don't think he's not scheduling this way to help prepare him to play them.
That's
But
right.
Sterlington, on the other hand, is playing Neville, West Monroe. It's like everybody's pushing the limit of their kids by playing teams that are better than they are. And I respect the heck out of that. I think that's awesome.
Well, and and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but you know, going into the season, again, it has to do with the power ratings as well, and trying to get those key positions, and trying to at least stay within the top 16, and getting a couple of home games as well. That's just that's been the name of the game over the last couple of years, and I'm looking at Union Parish's schedule right now. So they beat Homer, they beat Airline, they have Captain Street this week at home. Then they go to Bastrop, and they've been struggling the last couple of years, but still, be a good little rivalry game. And then they host Franklin Parish, which is they've always been a decent 4A school. And then they go into district after that: North Webster, Sterlington, Richmond, Wassman, and Carroll. And I feel like that district's going to be a little improved this year. Just some great talent that's going to develop by the time that the Farmers get to play them. So definitely a brutal schedule. And Sterlington, again, like you said, they play Oak Grove this week, which is going to be a really good game. And Oak Grove struggled against Ouachita Christian this past week, but that just goes to show you how strong the Eagles are again this year. So, man, just seems like Northeast Louisiana has a lot of good football being played right now.
They do. And I want to say that, and I'm going to check it while in just a second. The Mangum quarterback had 100 rushing, 200 passing, and as did maybe the Ouachita Christian. I'm gonna because I read it and like I said, I misplaced my notes, but I shouldn't have said it until I was positive. But I think it's something like that.
You know what? I thought I'll look at I got the Ouachita Citizen with our good buddy Jake Martin, who sports editor
Outstanding job.
there. I'll try to look that up and see, and maybe if it was mentioned, but Mangum's one of those. We talked about it. I think last week or a couple weeks ago. Uh, Mangum's just one of those teams that they just fly under the radar the entire year. Nobody really talks about them. Nobody puts them in their playoff picture. But come the middle of November, they're right there in the midst of it. So, like I said, just Oak Grove, Ouachita Christian, Neville, Ouachita, Mangum, Sterlington, Jonesboro Hodge, General Trask. Like I said, Ouachita's improved this year. I think Wassman's going to get better as the season progresses.
Right.
Terrence Cahey, who was a defensive coordinator down here at Lake Charles Prep and also played at McNeese State, really good guy, really good coach. I think he's going to have them prepped for the playoffs as well.
So Mangum's Jalen Williams, he had 154 yards rushing and over 100 receiving.
Insane.
So that's outstanding.
Insane. Yeah, so definitely not a lack of talent up there in Northeast Louisiana. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses up there, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But anyways, Todd, any final thoughts going into the third week of the season? Anything you'd like to see, or any?
Warren Easton Carr, they're playing down in New Orleans. Again, Warren Easton has just played a schedule that's,
Yeah.
They're one of like 4 or 5 schools that are just absolutely out of their mind for scheduling
Grueling.
the way they do.
That's right.
You look over in you got Brother Martin and St. Thomas More. You got Turlings at St. Charles are 2 good ones.
That's going to be a
Catholic
good game.
Baton Rouge and U High here locally. EA Destrehan are going up north. Westgate travels to Evangel. Neville travels to Huntington. Alexandria to Natchitoches Central. Sterlington at Oak Grove, as you mentioned. Then West Monroe, I think Republic, Tennessee goes there.
Yes.
To West Monroe. Then you got in New Orleans, you got Jesuit and Lafayette Christian. It's a good one.
It's
You
gonna be
got
good.
Newman and Benton, Central Catholic and Riverside, uh, Carr, Warren Easton, and then on the North Shore, you have some good ones with Mandeville, Walker, North Shore, Hanville, and Salmon, Bogalusa. I think Bogalusa and North Shore are two teams that you can keep an eye on. Bogalusa hadn't really been a contender for a couple of years now, but they've got a lot of returning starters, and they have the opportunity to have a real good year.
So Ashton Levi, who is their quarterback, and again, one of those athletes that I think kind of gets a little overshadowed just because we have so much quarterback talent in the state. Just does a tremendous job for Cyril Crutchfield, and that just goes to show you Cyril Crutchfield's influence on a program. Everywhere that he's been, he's won. So he's the head coach at Bogalusa now, and I think he's going to have them as contenders, if not this year, then on down the road. But yeah, just man, just so many good matchups, and it usually I always felt like in the past you had to wait till about this time, like the third or fourth week before you started getting some good matchups because everybody wanted to get their feet under them. That has not been the case this year for a majority of the teams. That will be in the in a late season playoff picture. Just that Zachary and Saint. I tell you another game to keep an eye on Friday night, and that's Newman and Benton. That is a game that nobody ever thought would happen, but Benton's going to make the trip down to Newman, and then Newman's going to turn around next week and they get to go play Manny, and which everybody is saying that's going to be probably the game of the year. You got Arch Manning going up against Tackett Curtis, two of the top recruits in the state and in the country as well. So, like I said, there's just a lot of good football being played, and there's going to be a lot of good football to be played on down the road. So, not a lack of competition at all.
So I'm going to give you a heads up about Bogalusa if you ever go there. All right. So Bogalusa has a 9-hole golf course. All right. So you play number one the first time, or I think it's number one the first time. It's all good. Then when you come back and play number 9 is 10, I mean, number one is 10, there's an imaginary lake that appears. So it's off to the left side. I hit a ball. They're like, oh, it's in the lake. I'm like, there's no lake there. They said, yeah, it's imaginary lake. It's marked off. I'm like, you've got to be me. And I'm like, there's no way. Bogalusa Country Club. They have a imaginary lake on number
Oh
10.
my God.
Is that not great or what?
I love it. That just sounds like a small town. I don't even know if Bogalusa is a small town, but yeah, no,
Paper Mill's there.
that does not surprise me at all. But like seriously though, Todd, like you know, but and I know there's been some controversy around his name, several times in the last couple of years, but seriously, Cyril Crutchfield, I mean, the guy doesn't get the credit he deserves as far as building programs and sustaining programs, and he won at Port Sulphur, he won at South Plaquemine, he went to St. Augustine and he coached up Leonard Fournette. I think he had other stops, I think at Broadmoor and somewhere
Yes.
else. And but like I said, everywhere he's been, for the most part, he's been successful. And when he got that Bogalusa job, I told somebody, I said, he's going to have that program winning. I'm not saying it's championships, but I promise you they're going to be winning again. And he's training I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he's always talking about how he's developing the athletes and training them and getting them better. So you know can never count out Bogalusa this year or in the coming years. And like I said, Ashton Levi, that quarterback, is just phenomenal to watch.
Hunter, it's so important that from a coaching perspective, that the administration has your back. And I've heard on several occasions that administrations will promise coaches certain things, that they can have certain spots.
Right.
Um, so what coaches have to do sometimes, if it's not like a college. So if I went to a high school, it would only be me, and I would have to work with the staff that's there. So what I try to do is get 2 teaching spots that are preferably PE or easy classes that I could attract some good coordinators to come over. And they'll say, okay, you can do that. But when it comes time to do it, they don't follow through on it.
Right.
And that really makes things difficult. One, you can't promise people something and not give them what you promised. But two, you're really strapping that coach and really kind of letting him know how much you have his back from an administrative point. But every winning program will tell you that their principal supports them, and it's huge. And so maybe, that's something that, Coach Crutchfield, fine. I'm just guessing, to be able to
Yeah.
move like that. So there's some factors that come into it. It's not always winning and losing, but administration has a big deal to play in it. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, that is, coming from a small town, and coming from a football program that has a lot of tradition, and the first thing that gets brought up every time is, we wouldn't be here without our community. Our community supports us, and we wouldn't be out we wouldn't be out here winning championships without them. And so that's definitely the case. Up there in Haynesville, where I'm from, and always have had a strong support from the leadership, not only at the school, but from the school board as well. So definitely that definitely plays a factor in it. So, all right, Todd, let's get into what everybody's been waiting for. Friday, the LHSAA released and I thought it was kind of funny that they dropped it Friday, when everybody was getting ready for their football games, and everybody was getting ready to go out the door to the football game. But certainly it made for a good news day, a good news story to add to the football. But anyways, the LHSAA. Let's recap a little bit. Let's do
All right.
this. So Wednesday, the LHSAA Executive Committee met to go over appeals from, I think it was 72 different schools who had been placed on the select side under the new definition that was voted on back in June. And that definition, voted on by the executive committee under the 4.4.4 bylaw in the Constitution that promotes fair play. That new definition includes, charter schools, magnet programs, magnet schools, traditional private schools, open enrollment schools, charter schools, lab schools. So if you fell into that definition, you were placed on the select side. So the LHSA gave a little window for schools who felt like they belonged on the non-select side. They gave them a window to appeal. Those appeals took Wednesday. 26 out of the 70, I think it was 72, Todd, if I counted correctly, but 26 out of the 72 schools who appealed won their appeal. And I'll just give a quick rundown. We'll just go by parish. So Cameron Parish, that's schools like Grand Lake, South Cameron, Hackberry. Concordia, which was Faraday, Vidalia, Monterey, Ville Platte, Jackson Parish, which was Jonesboro, Hodge, Quitman, and Weston. Iberville Parish, which was East Iberville, Plaquemine, and White Castle. Southside out of Lafayette Parish. Livonia out of Point Coupee Parish. Richland Parish had Delhi, Mangum, and Rayville. Opelousas out of St. Landry. Amite, Independence, and Kentwood out of Tangipahoa. And Forest, Kilbourne, and Oak Grove out of West Carroll Parish. And I didn't include Johnson Parish and Cameron Parish. Johnson Bayou and Cameron Parish. I missed them. But those were the 26 schools who were granted their appeal and placed back on the non-select side. So once that was done, on Thursday, the executive committee met again to go over options to restructure the playoff formats for football, girls and boys basketball, baseball, and softball. So they took these 26 schools who were granted their appeals, plugged them into, I think there were 4 or 5 options on the table. I think Todd will have more information on that as far as the options. But there were a couple options on the table, so they plugged all that new information in. They went over those options on Thursday, voted on the one they liked the most, and that's where we get to on Friday when the LHSAA released their new playoff formats that is going to be active for the 22-23 sports season, which means it becomes active now. And
Which you can find on gopreps.com.
which you can find on gopreps.com. You got the whole story there, plus all the documents that were released as well. Todd, before we really get into it, when all the information was released, look, this may not be the perfect plan. This might not be the plan. This might not be, it might be a great plan. It may be a horrible plan. But Todd, it was something, and it was time for something to happen. Eddie Boatnon and the LHSAA executive committee gave the principals almost 10 years to come up with something better than what the format that we have now or had prior to Friday. And nothing could, there were several good options presented.
Yep.
All got voted down each time. I relate it to what recently happened for the college football playoff, how it was recently expanded to 12 teams. For 2 or 3 years, that committee that runs the playoff, people had begged them, like, do something. 8 teams, 12 teams. We need more than Ohio State and Clemson getting in every year. So they sat on it. They let it go. Well, finally, the president stepped in and said, this is what we're doing. This is what's best for college football. This is what's going to happen now. We're putting this in place. I kind of feel like that was kind of the same thing here. The executive committee was like, okay, it's our turn. We're gonna institute this. We're gonna see if it works. It may get voted down at the January convention when it comes up to be ratified. But hey, we tried. We tried something, and it's going to at least be in for this year.
A lot of reasons that this proposal from 2013 didn't work is because of the boundaries that they went outside of, that the LHSAA Constitution prevents them from doing. Like, a proposal or an author cannot create divisions for a sport that already doesn't have divisions in it. It's the executive committee's job, because I'll use that proposal for example. If there's 24 divisions, it would have still passed. Well, at some point, you've got to give that to somebody that knows a little bit more about what's going on. So, and the truth is, Louisiana doesn't have the amount of private schools in upper classes to be able to split the association the way it needs to be.
Right.
Well, that created a situation to which a mercy rule was implemented and a running clock at certain times. Well, I've watched the margin of victory over the years, and it's a lot greater than what it was previously. And that's the integrity of the association. But someone within the principals, I don't think, pay attention to enough outside of their own school to be able to make these decisions. So every year they would come up with a different idea, a different spin. It was no. They could all tell you it's because they recruit. Well, all right. So, I think, there's been several articles from public school principals and coaches that say, hey, we all do it. Okay. So that's got to go.
Right.
But they would never stand up and make a change. And you have to. And not just in football. I mean, you look at girls basketball, they got 5 teams in a bracket. And 3 of the 5 have records of 4 and 40. Look
Yeah.
at in softball and baseball. It's not right. And people can sit there and say whatever they want to about this proposal. Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. It will never be as bad as what the private schools experienced in 2013. For the record, I'm a public school guy and my kids go to public schools. So, that's, I'm not on here, to tout private schools. I want to be able to talk about fairness.
Right.
And, you know, no one ever addressed the rule. So this rule that allows private schools to take kids from outside their zone was put in place and passed by public school principals. The private schools have never had the majority in the LHSAA to where
Right.
they could put things in there as they need. So the public school principals did it for a reason. And that reason was, if you have a very good public school and a very good private school that mirror each other,
Hmm.
90% of those kids are going to go to the public school because it's free. Now, when you start adding the worst public school systems in the country into it, that number is not going to be 90-10 anymore. They're going to fly over there.
Right.
And, as I think I mentioned last week, we had an option. We didn't want to go to private schools, so we came out to Ascension Parish. So a lot of that North Louisiana doesn't understand. And I didn't understand, Hunter, until I came down here. But with that being said, if you're going to penalize or make a team that takes kids from outside their attendance zone, play in a different division, you got to do it to all of them.
That's
You can't
correct.
pick and choose who you want over there. It's got to be a solid rule that covers all the bases. And
Well,
that wasn't the case.
no, and you're right. Well, in the thing that I have to remind myself is back in 2013, and I think this is what's tripping everybody up, is there was no definition for select up until this year. It became that 25%, whatever. Um, but and I'm not saying that public schools were, purposely doing it. They were just going by the rules that were in place. So if you had a public school with a magnet program, or if you had a charter school, or if you had a lab school or whatever, there was no clear-cut definition. Okay, well, you're a select school. That's what the executive committee was doing back in June. Hey, no matter if you like it or not, this is what a select school is. This is what they're going to be. And I think that's what got everybody so upset was, well, wait a minute. When we voted for the split, we were considered a public school. Yeah, but not only was it done unconstitutionally, I don't think there was that much thought put into it. And I know that the LHSAA and the executive committee, they get a lot of flack, but I promise you, this has been my first year kind of really digging in and seeing how those meetings are run. You got a lot of smart people in that room, and I promise you, they're not pulling this out of their tails. There is so much data and information that go in to these decisions and these rulings and these committee meetings. I mean, that thick, stacks paper that thick, detailing what some of these plans could do. And I think that's what really, has bothered a lot of people, is they think the LHSA, just pulls this out of thin air, and that's it's far from the case. It's far from the case.
Well, and I have documentation because I used the Freedom of Information Act to get emails from the 2013 and so forth executive committee. And I know that there was an agenda-driven narrative that was false. I read it. And so those guys had opportunities to go to other states and try to do things or ask advice from other states. And they opted to do it the way they wanted to do it. Eddie, on the other hand, they had an agenda. Eddie doesn't have an agenda. This executive committee doesn't have an agenda. And That's the difference. Everybody's never going to agree with all their calls, just like an official or anything. Everybody's not
That's
going to
right.
agree with it. But at some particular point, you've got to trust the guys that are making decisions and know that they're doing this in the best interest of the student athletes. And that's what Eddie and the LHSA staff and the executive committee does. It doesn't really fit for everybody. It's going to mess somebody up. I mean, Neville's not happy with it. High's not happy with it because they're in maybe Division 3 and they'd like to compete in Division 2. But if you don't like what's going on, there's one answer to it. And you have an opportunity in January to push everybody back together and do things the right way. And maybe there's some stipulations in there about that rule about allowing private schools to pull kids from outside their zone. Modify that rule to some extent
That's right.
so it's not as a free for all as it is now. And that's never been talked about.
Yeah, no doubt. And I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and they brought up, well, you know, you know, you got these schools up in this area that they have magnet programs, but they only draw 4 or 5 kids in from out of the district, and not all of them play sports. And my argument was, well, you have, you know, Lake Charles Prep. Not everybody that goes to Lake Charles Prep's a football player either. They don't all play sports. So that argument, although I understand what they're saying, it's not, to me. It's not valid because it's the same thing. You're still pulling kids from outside of your attendance zone, and by definition, that makes you a select school. It's no different than what a private school or a charter school is doing. Um, but anyways, yeah. So
You know,
anyways, yeah, go ahead.
when you look at a 1A school, for example, and 1A school is able to pull 4 kids from outside their parish, that's 8 starters.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going both ways. But, everybody says, oh, we don't do it. Well, my thing is, and I think you should have an open audit. Let the LHSA come in whenever they want to and take your athletes and look at it. And if you've got one that's outside the zone, boom, you're gone over to select.
yeah,
You know, um, but it's got the rules have got to fit everybody, and rules are generally made for using 1 or 2% of the population. And example is the holdback rule. Well, there's not many people that intentionally, well, there probably was, but not anymore, that intentionally hold back their kids. Then they end up doing it and they realize after the fact, oh, we lost a year of eligibility. Why do they do that? It doesn't make sense. And they're right, but that rule wasn't made for you. It was made for the people that are trying to deceive, the
right.
rules, which it happens.
Um, so let's dig into this. So the association released the new format. So here's how it works. Before Friday, the way it worked, we'll take football for example. You had your select and your non-select divisions. On the select side, you had 4 divisions, 1 through 4, and it was basically split by class. You had 5A, 4A, 3A, and 2A or 4A and 3A were together. Then you had 2A and 1A for the select side, and it was 16 teams, and then 1A, the Division 4 was 24 teams going into this year. And then on the non-select side, you had classes 1A through 5A, and it was 32 teams, except for 1A, they had top 24 get in. So what the LHSA voted to do was they would make 4 divisions for each side. So we lose 1 division, which would be on the non-select side. So now you have 8 total brackets for football. Non-select, the top 28 advance to the playoffs. So that leaves the top 4 seeds with getting a first round bye. And then on the select side, it stays at 4 divisions, but it increases to 24 teams getting in for divisions 1 through 3, and again, Division 4 was already at 24 for the select side. Um, what's significant about that is on the select side, you have more representation as far as how many select schools there actually are in the divisions. So Division 1 through 3 increased to 34 schools each, with Division 4 growing to 33. Before this, Division 1, I believe, had, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe not even 16 or 17 schools in that division, and usually it was only 8 maybe that
Probably 12 to 13. Yeah.
12 to 13, that's right. Yeah, because there was only 8 schools, I think, that got in the Division 1 playoffs or elected to play. And then, just I'm just going to touch on the other sports. So girls basketball, uh, all sports, it's 4 divisions on each side. So for your smaller sports, instead of 12 championships, now you have 8. So it's shrunk by 4 championships. For girls and boys basketball, you're going to have 32 teams advance on the non-select side, 28 advance on the select side. And then for softball and baseball, you've got 32 teams on the non-select side and 24 teams on the select side. And if you're wondering why the non-select side has more teams getting in, well, obviously, when those 26 schools won their appeal Wednesday, it flipped the majority. So non-select now has the majority of schools, and I had that number somewhere, and I
It's funny you just brought that up
can't
because
find it.
that's what I was just doing math on. So 70, it's 96 out of the 136 football schools for select make the playoffs. That's
Okay.
70%. And 112 of 168 make it for non-select, which is about 67%. So percentage wise, they're right there together.
And
Make sense?
yes, and that I think that was the main goal that the executive committee was trying to work towards, was to create a more level playing field as far as teams getting into the playoffs, qualifying for the playoffs. Not necessarily, they may have a losing record, but you're not going to see any 1-9 teams anymore. I don't really see that happening. You may have one slip up. That's just how power ratings work every now and then. But you have more parity in these brackets, and going, and Todd, you may have these numbers, but going into the season before this was voted on, I feel like you had a lot more public schools qualifying for the playoffs than the private schools did. Like I said, Division 1, which was your Class 5A private schools, there were only 8 teams getting into the playoffs in that top division.
Well, you had Rummel, you had Shaw, and you had St. Aug all playing up to
That's
make
right.
that Division One happen.
And John Curtis.
Maybe McKinley too.
And John
And
Curtis.
John Curtis.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. So I mean, 5 of the 13 are but right off the top of my head, 13, 16. That was about 14, 30, 43. That's 59. So let's say 60 out of 85. No, you're right. I don't have it in front of me, but the select schools uh, had a good bit in, and the non-select had a good bit in. It shouldn't have been in.
Yeah, no doubt. So to further go into how this was broken down. So what the LHSA did, the executive committee. So we'll take the non-select for football. So there was 5 classes originally. They shrunk it down to 4. So what they did is they took the non-select schools, they put them into this format, and they divided the schools up by equal fourths based on their enrollment. So from Dutchtown all the way to Plain Dealing, all those schools in between, they broke it up into 4 equal groups. And like I said, I think for non-select, I think it was 42, 42, 42, and then 41.
Yes, I agree with
Yeah, so now you have 42 schools in each group going up to that division, from Division 1 to Division 3, and then just because there's not as many 1A schools, You have that 41 number. But for Division One non-select, which is the public schools, you've got Dutchtown, who's the highest enrollment, and it goes down to Westgate, who's that lowest enrollment in that first quarter of the schools. So it goes from so you're going to have 5A, 4A, you're going to have 4A, 3A teams together, 3A, 2A, and then 2A, 1A. This is not your traditional 1A plays together, 2A plays together, 3A plays together. What the LHSAA has done is they've come in and said, we're going to make this a fair playing ground. We're going to take schools with like enrollment and put them together in equal force. Same for the select side. You've got 5A and 4A schools, 4A and 3A, 3A and 2A, and then actually Division 4 is all 1A schools themselves just because there's a smaller number of private schools in the state. Todd, just initial thoughts, me looking at it, I loved it. I loved how, and I know there's going to be some people that say, like for 5A, it's, a difference. You got 2636, and then the lowest is 938. So you have a little disparity, but it this makes a lot more sense to me than allowing, a Class 2A to get 32 teams in when they only had, I guess, I don't really remember, but maybe 40. I don't know. It just makes a lot more sense to me the way they did it, and they shrunk the divisions or classifications or whatever you want to call them into equal force. But they did it by enrollment for playoffs only. They didn't do it the traditional way, if that makes sense.
So my first thought about the attendance gap is this: in 2013, the proposal that passed for the selects and passed overwhelmingly, the margin was there was only two divisions. It was 2,300 with Jesuit that went all the way down to Miller McCoy with 385. So anybody gripes about that on the public side, you kind of set the standard when you passed what you passed in 2013. The other thing is Florida has 800, 900 schools. They have I think they've got 9 championships. So doing the math tells you there's 100 schools in each class or in each division. So looking at what Louisiana has, 8, it's way out of the box too many. And when you go back to when Louisiana had 4 classes up until 1991, you had a lot of schools battling it out. There's 300 football playing schools. You divide it by 5, that's 60 in each. That's kind of the minimum you would want to go. And anything more than that's just trying to appease people within the rules that are out there. That's not what needs to be done. There needs to be more like 55 or 60 teams in per class or per division. But the LHSAA can only do so much. They've still got to work, even though the proposal was bogus. They still have got to work within that proposal to try to correct something that was done outside of the Constitution, which makes it really, really hard to do.
Well, looking at the numbers here, a lot of people got to remember. So on the select side, a lot of these, well, for football specifically, a lot of the private schools in this top division, in that Division 1, some of them are all boys schools. Well, the way that the LHSA does it is they double their enrollment. So like, for example, Catholic of Baton Rouge, their enrollment's 2180 for classification purposes, but in reality it's half of that. And then so that, let's say that's 1,000 over, somewhere close to 1,000. Well, McKinley, who's at the bottom of that Division 1, they're at 929. So it's really not that much of a disparity on the select side. There's some on the non-select, But again, going back to what you said, uh, you know, it's been done before. There were four classifications. There used to be four classifications. And I know this. You can only put a 22 kids on the field at one time. You can only put 11 men on the field on each side. So I know you have a bigger pool to choose from, but um, like I said, definitely it's just better than what was there before. I feel like you have schools who are going to be able to actually play with each other and compete with each other now, and the ones that maybe struggled before in the class or division they were playing, now they're grouped with schools that they'll be able to compete with as well, if that makes sense. But um, because there may
What
be
else
some.
this helps is the
What's
official shortage. Now,
That's
just
true.
looking at
And
it, I
that was
doubt
another
that they.
component. That was another
Yeah.
component that the executive committee took into account as they were looking over these options was what can we do about the official shortage? And I'm sorry, Todd, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, you're right.
No, it's a good point because if you were some of the ones that were out there complaining about the official shortage or the officials and you don't like this plan, what you want to do? I mean, there's, there's a rhyme and a reason for what they do, you know?
Yeah,
It's
no doubt.
it's crazy.
Um,
But I'm with you. I like it. I think, initially looking at it, you look at these, you know, there's going to be some, you know, great matchups coming down in November.
uh, yeah, real quick before we get into that. So, I had a lot of people texting and calling me asking, uh, this doesn't make any sense. I'm in class 1A, but I'm competing in division 3 now, but teams in my district are competing in in a division 4. Um, what I was telling people is this has no bearings on the regular season. You're still in your classification that you were
Right.
set in. You're still in your same district, going up against the same district foes that you're competing against year in and year out. This was just done for playoff purposes only. And yes, some schools are going to be playing in different divisions for different sports. But again, it all goes back to parity, and the LHSAA was trying to pair schools with, again, like schools just like them based on enrollment that they figured would give everybody a fair playing field, um, reducing the number of teams that get in, as well as reducing the classifications. Todd, there was just too many, especially for not only football but especially for the smaller sports. There's too many. There's too many championships. There's too many classes. Too many teams being able to get in. You referenced the Division 5 for girls basketball or boys basketball, only having 5 schools in their division, and some of them don't even have winning records. This eliminates that. I feel in the smaller sports, you've even got B and C schools that are going to be competing with 1A and 2A schools, which I've never understood. I understand why there were B and C schools, but you've got some B schools that have larger enrollment than some 2A and 1A schools. So now they're going to be able to compete against those schools. I love it. I mean, if from
So,
a
Hunter, if
fan,
you're non if,
go ahead.
if you're non-football playing school, like your enrollment could be whatever in just a non-football, you're gonna there's certain criteria I think that fall under B. Like you're talking about the Doyles, the French settlements
Yep.
that, but they're classified as B even though that they're 2A.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No. You're right. And yeah, I'm sorry. I should have clarified that. The B and C schools are just they're non-football playing schools. Some of them have enrollments of a 2A or a 1A school, but because they didn't play football, they had always been classified separately. Well, now that's not the case anymore. They are lumped in with the 1A and 2A schools. And like I said, not just football, but for all the split sports, it's all going to be 4 divisions on each side. and that's going to include the B and C schools. Um, but anyways, going back to your original point, Todd, as a football fan, I love this. I'm looking at the non-select Division 3. I mean, Todd, you've got Sterlington, North Webster, Manny, Red River, Rose Pine, Union Parish, Kinder, just to name a few. These are the type of schools that are going to be competing against each other in the playoffs now for football. It could change for the other sports, but as a football fan, I love it. I think it's gonna change the landscape. I think it's gonna change the level of competitiveness. You're gonna have teams. You're not gonna have 70-0 blowouts anymore. I think at least starting with the second round, you're gonna have state championship type matchups in some of these divisions on both sides, and that's what's been lacking over the last couple of years, and I think that's what fans are finally going to get this year.
And I think that's a great point because, again, when you're looking across the entire state, we see these matchups. We see in the second round and even in the third round, there's a team with a losing record playing an 11-0 team.
Yeah,
And, you want to be able to play the best that's available second round, third round, go through the grind of each week. And a lot of classes hadn't been doing that. And I think what you're going to eventually see is classes and divisions thrown out, and they're going to come out and rename them because when people think of it in classes and divisions, it's going to confuse them, right? Like you explained, is the best way to do it. And I think eventually, that would get thrown out. And I think that it's definitely a good thing for sure.
yeah, and to our listeners, I'm going to go ahead and apologize if we're confusing you with all the divisions and classifications. And look, we're a little confused ourselves because we're still digging into all this, and we're still trying to learn this new format. But again, Todd, this is just this is something that high school sports has needed over the last 10 years since the original split. There's been a lot of proposals that have been voted down. Going back to my original statement when we started talking about this, is this the perfect plan? I don't know. It may not be. It may be the worst thing ever, but it's something different. It's something that we've got to try and see how it works. Um, Change was needed, and if it
Yes.
wasn't going to be done by the principals, then under the 4.4.4 rule, the executive committee was going to finally take it into their hands and say, "Hey, look, we got to do what's best for the student athletes and for the kids, and be able to provide them, the best high school athletic experience." And I know there's a lot of people that won't agree with that, but I really feel like at the end of the day, that was Mr. Bonon's and the executive committee's primary goal was to make this a fair and level playing ground in all sports for all student athletes.
You know, um, the last thing I wanted to touch on is I've heard a couple of coaches here lately. I just don't understand how they can change it in the middle of a season. Well, you knew it was coming, long before since June, you know. And so let me talk about the timeline real quick. So, principals have the summer off. The LHSA has the summer off. So it brings us all the way to August.
Right.
Well, at the beginning of school, you can't ask principals to leave their school and come down to Baton Rouge. Plus, the LHSAA is dealing with 500 to 600 eligibility forms to get kids eligible. So they've always had the meeting in September. I guess it's their fall one in September. And so it's really the quickest they could have it, keeping everything somewhat normal. I think to ask teachers, they don't get paid for this, to ask principals to come down here and leave their school for a lot of days. And I just don't think that was right. And I don't think Eddie coming, Eddie has a education background and an athletic background. And I think he understood that. And so, to those coaches, I'd say, did you try not to win a game? What, and I do understand. I get what they're saying. But at the end of the day, how does that affect your first 2 weeks? Did you, because of the class you were going to play in, did you do something different? And that answer is no. So, I understand, but at the same time, it's not an excuse.
Yeah, and one of the biggest questions I was getting from some coaches around the state was, uh, you know, how is this affecting the power ratings? And of course, on GoPreps.com, we provide the power ratings throughout the year, especially with football. Um, it's not affecting the power ratings. I've asked several that have been close to this situation, and they're going to go as is with the power ratings, the current formula. And the reason I bring that up is some coaches put together these schedules for certain reasons, PowerPoint reasons. Well, now you've got 4A schools lumped in with 5A schools. Well, the 5A schools are, they're upset because they can't earn play up points, which is if you play if a 4A school plays a 5A school, they get 2 points for playing up. And, obviously the smaller divisions get more as they play up. But again, I think this just goes back to, this may not be the perfect plan, but hey, let's tweak it in January. Let's keep it, but let's tweak it. We may have to redo the formula. We may have to get rid of play-up points. I don't know. But I wanted to address that because there have been a lot of questions about that. To my knowledge, the power ratings are staying the same this year. They're going to get they're going to qualify based on their power rating at the end of the season, no matter if they've played up, if they haven't played up, or whatever. But I just wanted to clarify that for those who may still have questions about that. So yeah, like I said, there may be some things that need to be ironed out in January if this is something that the principals want to keep, and God, I hope so. I hope we don't go back to where we were before. I just hope this is serving as a
Well,
stepping stone.
I got news
Go ahead.
for you. If they do try to go back, the executive committee is going to switch it back again next summer. I
Yeah,
mean, it's especially if they find that it's a better solution, then that's telling you that they're not doing what's best for the association. You know, you got to get out of this selfish mode and your anger against private schools or whatnot, and you got to do what's best for the kids. And that's what this whole thing's about. And right now, these adults, a lot of them aren't doing that because they don't know the whole story.
right. Well, and my initial thought when this thing passed, when this information was released Friday, and I was looking through it, my initial thought was, I hope somebody, takes this plan and develops it into maybe a better plan, or takes this idea and comes up with a whole new plan and introduces it in January. I'm hoping this sparks some ideas and some principals and athletic directors around the state, who may like this plan. And I've talked to people who love it. I've talked to people who don't really like it. Not the plan overall, but some of the components in it. And I'm like, well, let's make it better. Let's try something. But a lot of the coaches that I talked to, they didn't like the current plan we were in, which I thought that was funny as well, because we've had 10 years to change it and nobody's changed it. But anyways, but yeah, like I said, it's something different. It's something that I think we need to try. I'm telling you, I just got this feeling that come playoff time, the amount of potential matchups that you are going to get with this new system, money talks a lot. And if you get some good gates based on these playoff matchups, I don't know how you can't come back and say, well, maybe this is working. Nobody wants to come watch my team blow out, Hunter Bauer Prep 70-0 when Sterlington comes in, and I get a really good gate, and it was a really good game going into the semifinals or the state championship. Uh, I think once you get those results with some of these matchups, I can't imagine some attitudes not changing about this.
My hope is that the superintendents who came down here to speak, I hope they get more involved
Yeah,
with their principals in the process. And I hope that they can remove themselves from, of course, you want them to do what's best for their school board, but
right.
if it's not what's best for the whole state, we got to think about it and try to take things that way. So that's my biggest hope is that there needs to be some accountability to the principals when they're making these decisions, as well as, the executive committee. It's all a voting thing, but still sometimes it's too late at that particular point. But I'm with you. Hey, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. It's going to be easier because you're going to be able to cover everything in 1 week, and you're not going to have to spend as much money because you're going to the Superdome. It all
That's right.
works out.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know, in case you don't know already, back in June, the executive committee also voted to bring public and private schools back together under the same roof for state championship events. So, for example, for the Prep Classic, you're going to have all 8 championships in the Superdome now, which I totally agree with. And again, that's just an experience that a kid will never forget. And I think that's larger, and I think that means more than a paycheck. I know money talks a lot, but to see that look on a kid's face when they walk into the Superdome for the first time or the last time as a senior, it's priceless, and I think it's worth more than money at the end of the day. So, again, Todd, a lot of people, I think this is just gonna. It's a lot of people are shell shocked. I think it's gonna take a couple weeks for this to soak in and for people to dig into this and study it. And again, I'm still studying, and I really haven't gotten a chance to look at the smaller sports and see how they're broken down. I just knew that, like I said, the B and C schools are now lumped in with the 1A and 2A schools as they should be per enrollment. But you know, I can only see, in my opinion, I can only see positives from this. I hope it works for the sake of the student athletes. But again, at the end of the day, it was a lot better than what we had coming into the 2022 season and basically what we've had over the last 10 years.
Just you won't find Beekman Charter and you won't find Ben Franklin on these charts that were just released, and that's because they're not playoff eligible for this year.
Yeah,
Just to let you know.
Beekman, Ben Franklin, and then you had Westminster Lafayette and Lafayette Charter. They're 2 schools that are on probation periods as well. So there's 4 schools that are actually going to be added next year to whatever playoff format we have. So just for anybody that was wondering why those schools weren't included on these lists. So
The proposals for 2023 were supposed to be submitted at the end of August. Hopefully we can get our hands on them and maybe we can discuss that in a podcast. That would be kind of fun to do.
yeah, no doubt. And, hopefully, somebody who may have had an inkling of what was going to happen on Thursday and Friday kind of got wind of this and, maybe started developing their own plans or own proposals that, maybe played into this or took away from that. But like I said, at the end of the day, Mr. Bonon and the executive committee, they did what was best for the student athlete and for the competition and for the level of fairness. And I think they got it right with this plan. I really do.
Only time will tell.
That's true. So, but anyways, you can go to the website, gopreps.com, to read more about it. We've got the information on there as well as the documents that they sent out. That's broken down by each division for all the split sports. So be sure to go check it out there. Todd, any final thoughts before we end the night?
No, I really appreciate it and really enjoyed it. And, you know, uh, any topics we need to cover, email Hunter, Go
Tw-
Preps. Um, it could be anything. I just enjoy talking ball, but this the LHSA stuff. I really feel a lot of times that things get out of context is
Yeah.
that people don't understand the rules.
Right.
And if we can help clarify the rules to some people about certain things, all the better. But a lot of times you'll hear things and you're like, no, that's not the case at all. So, that's I think that's a big thing. And but ultimately I think like only time will tell, and I think it'll be fun. It's
Yeah.
not going to be any worse, I promise you that.
We, I'm hoping, depending on his schedule, to get Mr. Bonin on here for an interview, just to kind of, go through his mind of, these new plans as well as the future. The convention coming up in January, and what he thinks or what he expects. So we're going to try to have him on here in the future as well. We're going to try to get some other guests, as coaches and things like that, just to kind of get their takes on this, and as well as preview the rest of their season. But Todd, before we go, shout out your show for Friday night. Let people know where to check you out, and what channel you're on and what time you'll go on at.
So if you're in the Baton Rouge area, it's Louisiana Prep Scoreboard. We are on after Catholic High, which is 104.5, 104.9, usually around 10 o'clock. You also can listen to us around the state on the website, on the app, like you would anywhere else. You can also see us around the state on YouTube. We have that. And then in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette, we're on Channel 4, which is Your View. And Cade starts it off with his preview show at 6 o'clock on Fridays. And then we go from 10 to 12. After that, we cover the state. We try to talk to as many people as we can, and want it to be informative. We want to add some insight, but we also want like to get people such as yourself and other coaches on to discuss, some area games. And we have a lot of fun with it. And join us Friday nights, 10 to 12, YouTube, ESPN. I'd say you probably should rather listen to us than look at us. It's probably a little bit more enjoyable.
When
Thank you
we're
for letting me do that.
Yeah, no problem. When we're sitting in here on Friday nights, inputting scores, I always turn Todd and the crew on my TV in here. I turn on YouTube and listen to them while we're plugging away. But they do a really good job. Todd and Cade and Jimmy. They have some really good interviews, coaches and special guests. I think Coach Eric Held comes on there a couple times a year, and is always a good guest to have on there. He's very informative and knowledgeable of high school sports here in the States, the LHSCA director. So, yeah, just a great show. And, again, Todd, we're happy to have you a part of this podcast this year, and, digging deep into to high school sports. So
Hey,
we
we even
really
talked
appreciate it.
Sakalai or white perch, right?
White perch, that's what you call it. Over there in South Arkansas, that's what you call it in South Arkansas. Uh, anyways, guys, we really appreciate y'all tuning in again this week. We'll try to have, like I said, we try to have an episode out at least by Monday of every week. So just be checking our YouTube channel at GoPrepsLA. But you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. We'll post it there, and then Todd is going to post it on his social media as well. Be sure to go and give them a follow. That's Louisiana Prep Scoreboard on Facebook and Twitter. Before we go, got to give another shout out to Chevyland up in Shreveport. They're our sponsor for football this year. Chevyland.com, family owned and operated since 1962. Free delivery anywhere in Louisiana. They also have the Chevyland Advantage, which is no charge schedule maintenance for the first year of 12,000 miles. And if you want to sell your current car, they will make you a cash offer that same day as well. So Chevyland.com, proud sponsor of high school athletics, and GoPreps.com. We appreciate Bubba and the guys for supporting us again this year. Fellas, ladies, kids, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and Week 3's here already, so get out, support those kids, support the teams, the programs, the coaches, and we'll see you next time.